You were taught that Gabriel was a messenger, a gentle angel who appeared to Mary, who delivered God's word with compassion. That's the version they let you believe. What you're about to see is the full, uncensored truth about the Archangel Gabriel, pieced together from ancient texts, forbidden scriptures, and prophecies that the church buried. 5 chapters, 1 angel. And by the end, you'll understand why Gabriel is more terrifying than anything hell ever created. Forget the devil. Forget the forked tongue and the cheap deals for your soul. True terror isn't a choice. It isn't a temptation you can resist. True terror is a sound, a vibration in the air that freezes the blood in your veins and tells you, without a single word, that your life is already over. It is the cold, silent presence of a power so absolute, it doesn't even see you as a person, only as a thing to be corrected, a message to be delivered, or a body to be broken. This is not the story of a demon. This is the story of an angel. The fear of Satan is the fear of falling, of giving in to your own weakness. But there are ancient, buried stories that speak of a different fear, a fear not of corruption, but of finality, a fear of the Archangel Gabriel. These aren't the stories you hear in church. They depict a being of such terrifying and irreversible power that even the devil seems like a lesser threat. Because you can fight the devil, but you cannot fight a divine sentence. The price of a choice versus the horror of none. To understand this terror, you have to understand the devil's game. He's a parasite of choice. He whispers at the crossroads, offering power, knowledge, a way out. He thrives on your doubt, your desire, your what-ifs. The fear he inspires is the fear of your own failure, the sickening worry that you might be weak enough to fall for his trick. But underneath it all is a comforting lie. You have a say in the matter. The devil needs your permission. He needs you to open the door. Now, erase that idea completely. Imagine a being who doesn't need the door. Imagine a being who walks through the wall and stands before you, radiating a power that makes your bones ache. This is the Archangel Gabriel. His name in Hebrew, Gabriel, means strength of God. He is not a negotiator. He does not offer deals. Gabriel is a living, breathing, divine fact. When he appears, your choices are over. Your will is irrelevant. A decision has been made in a courtroom you cannot see, and he is merely the executioner of the verdict. And that is a far more intimate and soul-crushing terror. The fear of Satan is that your will might be corrupted. The horror of Gabriel is that your will never mattered at all. The body-breaking revelation. The Bible itself struggles to contain the sheer, physical horror of this angel's presence. When he appears to the prophet Daniel, it isn't a gentle meeting. It's a biological assault. Daniel sees a vision that leaves him shattered, and then a voice cuts through reality, commanding, "Gabriel, make this man understand." As the angel moves closer, Daniel collapses. He writes, "I was terrified and fell prostrate." This wasn't reverence. This was his body shutting down. Another vision is even more graphic. An angelic figure, often linked to Gabriel in ancient tradition, appears, and its description is one of pure, elemental horror. Its face was like lightning, its eyes like flaming torches. The sight was so traumatizing that Daniel's companions fled in blind panic, not even knowing what they were running from. Daniel was left alone, and he says, "I had no strength left. My face turned deathly pale, and I was helpless." His body betrays him. He literally passes out. Every cell in his being screaming as it's overwhelmed by the raw, unfiltered power of this celestial being. He wasn't just seeing an angel. He was experiencing a presence so absolute that his human form began to break apart. This isn't about faith, it's about physiology, and it gets worse. When Gabriel appears to the priest Zechariah to announce a miracle, Zechariah dares to question him. He asks, "How can I be sure of this?" Gabriel's response isn't a reassurance. It's a mutilation. "I am Gabriel, and now you will be silent." Instantly, Zechariah's throat constricts. His tongue turns to lead in his mouth. He tries to speak, to scream, to make a sound, but nothing comes out. His skepticism earned him 9 months of being trapped inside his own skull, his voice stolen from him. Gabriel didn't argue, he simply deleted a function. His authority wasn't just absolute, it was biological. The destroyer's task. But to witness the true, monstrous face of Gabriel, you must look where the church forbids you to go, the apocryphal Book of Enoch. This text, considered too terrible for scripture, was wildly influential in the ancient world, and it shows a much grislier cosmic order. In Enoch, God looks down upon a world infested. Fallen angels known as the Watchers have corrupted humanity and birthed monstrous offspring, the Nephilim. The world is screaming, drowning in violence and chaos. So the archangels are called forth, not to save, but to cleanse. To Gabriel, God issues a command of unimaginable cruelty. Chapter 10 gives the order, "Proceed against the bastards and the reprobates, and destroy the children of the Watchers from amongst men." But it's how he's told to do it. Send them one against the other that they may destroy each other in battle. Let that sink in. Gabriel isn't just ordered to kill them. He is tasked with turning them on one another. He must infect their minds, turning their unnatural alliances into a frenzy of self-destruction. He must orchestrate a supernatural civil war, where abominations tear their own brothers and fathers apart, limb from limb. This is not the gentle messenger of Christmas. This is Gabriel the exterminator, the angel of annihilation. He isn't just delivering a message of judgment. He is the gruesome mechanism of that judgment, a divine artist painting a masterpiece of slaughter. The horror of the void. Ultimately, the deepest, most paralyzing fear of Gabriel is what he represents. The psychological horror of an absolute, indifferent force. The devil, for all his malice, is tragically human. His motives, pride, jealousy, rebellion, are passions we can comprehend. We understand what he wants. He's a monster, but he's a monster with a personality. Gabriel, in these terrifying portrayals, is something else entirely. He is a function, a program, a walking silent void. When he strikes Zechariah mute, there is no anger or cruelty, any more than an earthquake feels anger when it topples a city. He is simply correcting an error in the system. The horror is realizing you are not in a battle for your soul. You are a bug in a divine code, and Gabriel is the patch that will erase you. Pleading with him is like begging a hurricane to change course. The fear of the devil is personal, but the fear of Gabriel is the cosmic, impersonal horror of realizing you are utterly insignificant. You are a stray cell in the path of a divine radiation that is cleansing the organism. He is not your enemy, you are simply in the way. That is why prophets collapsed. That is why their bodies failed them. They weren't just seeing an angel. They were staring into the cold, emotionless, and terrifyingly certain will of God made flesh. Over the centuries, art and religion have sanded down his edges, giving us a gentle, palatable messenger. But the old stories refuse to die. They remind us that while the devil might tempt you down a dark path, the true terror is Gabriel arriving to announce that your path, your will, and your very existence have already been terminated. The most terrifying sound in the universe isn't a demonic roar. It is the perfect, beautiful, and utterly final silence of heaven's judgment. These are the stories hidden in the margins and buried in forbidden texts. So now you know, Gabriel doesn't negotiate, he doesn't tempt, he executes. But that's just what the surface texts tell you. The deeper you dig into the ancient records, the worse it gets. When he appears, they do not kneel, they collapse, bodies betray their owners. Bones crack beneath an unseen weight, souls screaming silently as they buckle. He never speaks lightly, only when the end looms, only when humanity stands trembling on the precipice of cataclysm. He doesn't merely deliver messages, he enforces destiny, splitting reality as easily as lightning splits the sky. This is MonsterMythos, and today we face the harrowing truth behind Archangel Gabriel. In ancient scripture, Gabriel emerges from shadows with apocalyptic force. In the book of Daniel, his arrival shatters Daniel's strength, leaving him quivering on the ground, gasping for air. Gabriel's voice holds the doom of nations, visions bleeding through him. Images of fiery destruction and twisted redemption. Jewish texts amplify Gabriel's horrific presence, describing him engulfed in divine flames, his eyes burning with the white-hot wrath of judgment. He isn't merely God's messenger, he is divine judgment incarnate. His name, God is my strength, drips with dread, promising no mercy, no compromise. Christian narratives deepen his terror. Gabriel announces births that rupture history itself. John the Baptist, Christ. Each announcement delivered with a chilling finality that freezes hearts. His proclamations echo like funeral tolls, not invitations but commands. Islamic accounts sharpen his fearful image. As Gabriel, he forces revelation upon the Prophet Muhammad with brutal intensity. Muhammad, paralyzed with fear, returned from the cave of Hira convinced he had touched death. Later, Gabriel revealed his true cosmic form, a horrifying colossus whose massive wings blot out the stars, radiant and terrible, casting shadows across entire deserts. Gabriel's physical presence is universally devastating. Daniel is drained lifeless. Zechariah is violently silenced for doubting Gabriel's word, struck mute by divine force. Even Mary trembles, her innocence shattered by Gabriel's invasive arrival. These are not mere spiritual visions, they are terrifying confrontations, primal and savage, crushing human resilience. Theologians name this terror the numinous, a sensation where awe collapses into dread, reserved only for encounters with the divine. Gabriel is not cruel, he is inevitable, proximity to eternity that humanity cannot withstand. His presence exposes our deepest frailties, showing humans as helpless, insignificant, disposable. Not all angels share Gabriel's darkness. Michael fights valiantly to protect humanity. Raphael offers soothing comfort, quietly guiding souls. But Gabriel is an entity of pure dread. He does not guard nor gently assist. His arrival heralds an irrevocable decision. He does not debate, he commands, reshaping reality with terrifying clarity. In ancient apocalyptic lore, Gabriel assumes a role of merciless enforcer. The Book of Enoch portrays him punishing fallen angels who brought forbidden knowledge, violently binding them and eradicating their poisonous influence from earth. He acts swiftly, ruthlessly, cleansing the world with surgical precision. Rabbinic texts describe Gabriel as the harbinger of devastation, descending upon Sodom and Gomorrah like a storm, annihilating entire civilizations into smoldering ruins. In chilling whispers, apocryphal Christian writings hint at Gabriel judging souls, emotionless and clinical, a celestial inquisitor who measures worth in cold silence. Gabriel never intervenes prematurely. He waits patiently, terrifyingly still, only moving when judgment is decided. His strike is precise, unrelenting, inescapable. Muhammad's encounter with Gabriel was dramatic. Pressed almost to death, the prophet shook violently, terror-stricken by an otherworldly force. Gabriel's revelations did not comfort. They shattered reality, reshaped destiny, and scarred souls forever. His form was blinding, composed of searing celestial fire, terrifying in its intensity. In the final days, Gabriel's role darkens further. Christian Apocalypse describes him holding the trumpet of annihilation. His blast tears the fabric between life and death. Mountains collapse, oceans dry, graves rupture. His trumpet call is a chilling summons, unraveling existence in a single, devastating sound. Islamic prophecy similarly positions Gabriel at creation's undoing. Though Israfil wields the trumpet, Gabriel remains ever present amid cosmic chaos, overseeing the final collapse with ruthless precision, ensuring nothing escapes its ordained end. Gabriel's horror stems not from violence, but from absolute clarity. His presence annihilates comforting illusions, ripping away layers of human identity. He exposes raw truths that humanity desperately seeks to hide. Confronted by Gabriel, the self disintegrates into terror-filled reverence, helpless before an infinite force. Modern spirituality attempts to tame Gabriel, reducing him to a gentle guardian of intuition and peace. Yet, the true Gabriel defies this softening. Scripture refuses comfort. Gabriel never promised safety. He arrives with shattering inevitability, a living nightmare of blazing certainty and unyielding truth. We soften Gabriel to hide from unbearable truths, but his real presence towers terrifyingly, brilliant, overwhelming, relentless. Not a gentle guide, but a burning blaze incinerating false realities. Why is Archangel Gabriel terrifying? Because his voice ignites prophecy, topples kingdoms, splits reality in two. He does not soothe fears, he embodies them. Gabriel is not a whisper, but a scream from the heavens. A scream that echoes forever, relentless, terrifying, unstoppable. There are souls that have seen Gabriel, not in scripture, in memory, and the ones who remember too much, they never stay the same. Father McKenna never spoke about what happened in Cedar Falls that October night in 1983, not until the cancer took his voice, and he had to write it all down with shaking hands before the end came. It started with baby Sarah Morrison. The infant was born clinically dead, blue, cold, no heartbeat for 7 minutes. But when Father McKenna arrived at Mercy General to perform last rites, something impossible happened. The baby's eyes snapped open, ancient and knowing, and she spoke in a voice that made the heart monitors flatline. I remember the songs before creation. I remember when light first spoke to darkness. I remember, then silence, forever. As if invisible fingers had touched her lips. The next night, the whole town heard it. Not thunder, not wind. Something between church bells and the screaming of 1,000 birds. The sound came from above, from a sky that had gone completely black, swallowing even the streetlights. Father McKenna rushed outside and froze. Something vast hung over Cedar Falls. At first, he thought it was a storm cloud lit by lightning, but the light was too regular, too bright, and in its glow he saw them. Wings, hundreds of wings, thousands. They stretched from horizon to horizon, each feather blazing with cold fire. Between the wings, eyes, not 2 or 10, but countless multitudes, each one the size of a house, all focused downward on the sleeping town. Gabriel, McKenna whispered, and the name burned his tongue. The entity spoke, its voice like breaking glaciers, like the birth cry of stars. I have come for souls that remember too much. That night, 3 residents of Cedar Falls vanished. Not died, vanished. Tom Bradley, the mailman. Mrs. Chen from the flower shop. Young Danny Martinez, barely 18. Their clothes lay in neat piles where they'd stood, still warm, as if the people had simply evaporated from within them. The only trace McKenna found were impressions in the earth. Gentle depressions, as if enormous hands had reached down from heaven and lifted them away with infinite care. On the 3rd night, the Archangel descended closer. McKenna could see its face now, if it could be called a face. The features shifted constantly, sometimes young and beautiful beyond description, sometimes ancient and terrible, sometimes not human at all. Its eyes burned like binary stars, and light poured from its mouth when it spoke. "You baptize children, priest," Gabriel said, its voice echoing off of every surface in town. "But do you know what they remember in those first moments of life? They remember divine secrets. I touch their lips to make them forget, so they can live as mortals should live." McKenna understood with growing horror. The three who'd vanished. He'd baptized them all. 40 years ago, when they were newborns. And somehow, Gabriel had failed to steal their memories then, leaving them with fragments of celestial knowledge. "But some remember too much," the Archangel continued, its 600 wings rustling like autumn leaves. "Some begin to speak of what they saw before birth. These must be recalled." "What about the rest of us?" McKenna managed to ask through chattering teeth. Gabriel smiled, and that smile was more beautiful than sunrise and more terrible than nuclear fire. "The rest will forget this night. All will forget, except you, priest. You will remember, so you will know I am always watching. When a child is born who remembers too much, when someone begins to speak of heavenly mysteries, I will come." The entity vanished, leaving only the smell of ozone and the faint sound of bells ringing somewhere beyond the edge of the world. Father McKenna lived another 40 years. He baptized hundreds of children, and every time a newborn looked at him with eyes too old for their face, the old priest would whisper a prayer and listen to the sky, waiting for the sound of wings. Some knowledge is too dangerous for human souls, and there are watchers who ensure we forget it, no matter how gently they must take us home. What they remembered was horrifying enough, but what Gabriel has planned is something that hasn't happened yet. They say when Archangel Gabriel comes, the world holds its breath, tense and waiting. Not in the gentle way a lullaby hushes a child, but with a bone-chilling silence. A silence so thick it drowns out every heartbeat before it crashes down like thunder. I never believed the stories. Old whispers passed down in shadows and ancient churches. Tales told by elders who had seen too much and warned of things unseen. But I learned the truth one cold October night under a pale, living fog. The fog clung to twisted oaks behind my house, heavy with ash and fear's scent. It started with a sound, a trumpet low and mournful, echoing through the mist. My dog whimpered, ears flat against his head, refusing to leave the porch. That's when I saw it. A figure glowing at the edge of the dark tree line, bathed in a light that was dazzling, unbearable, too bright and too heavy to ignore. An angel, I thought, but not the cherubs from Sunday school paintings or stories. This was Gabriel, or at least I hoped it wasn't, and his presence froze my soul. Stories say those who see him first fall to knees, faint, or lose their voice. My breath caught and my legs refused to hold me as the figure stepped closer. The air around him was electric, alive, like moments before a storm breaks loose. His eyes were deep pools of fire and ice, not warm or cold, but vast and endless. His wings, unlike any paintings, hid beneath a cloak of shimmering starlight's glow. No halos, no soft feathers, just raw terror wrapped in the perfection of divine power. "Do not be afraid," his voice came. No voice, but a rumble inside my chest. It shook every bone, yet the calm in that phrase did little to soothe my panic. Gabriel's silence spoke louder than his words. He commanded, shaking the world's axis. I felt a weight pressing down, the knowledge that the world will turn on its head. The stories say Gabriel is not just messenger of light, but also of punishment. He carries fire and wrath hidden behind his gentle, fearsome visage and gaze. He delivers news of birth and miracles, but also warnings of chaos and judgment. I remembered the tale of Zechariah, how Gabriel stole his voice for doubting truth. "Your disbelief will silence you," was the angel's harsh and unforgiving judgment. A silence settled over me now, thick like a shroud, cold and terrifyingly real. With impossibly slow movements, he reached into his cloak and revealed a scroll, ancient and burning at the edges with an unholy, flickering flame of prophecy. The script twisted through languages long forgotten, whispering secrets of lost empires. The lines shifted like living things, revealing darkness, reckoning, and souls condemned. I wanted to close my eyes or turn away, but was rooted to the spot, like a moth caught in a spider's web, completely trapped in this terrifying vision. Then, in a voice like distant thunder crashing, he spoke words heavy with doom. Prepare. The end is no distant dream but a visitor knocking at your door. When the trumpet sounds, the veil between worlds will tear, and the earth will quake. I, the flame of God, summon you to witness the final, terrible reckoning. The night held its breath. The wind stopped, and even trees froze mid-sway in silence. And then there was silence, so thick it drowned the blood pounding in my ears. Suddenly, ancient memories flooded back. Gabriel is commander of legions and fire, a force beyond mortal comprehension, destroying and purifying in divine judgment. My voice caught itself somewhere deep in my throat. I tried to ask mercy, but no words came. I was struck mute, as if Gabriel's wrath had silenced me. Moments stretched into eternity. Then, just as suddenly, he dissolved into the mist, leaving behind lingering terror of something greater, darker than I could imagine. Weeks passed, but the night's echo remains in shadows and flickers of my sight. I see glows at the corner of my eye and faint trumpets carried on the wind. Deep down, I know the Harbinger's visit was less a warning, more a decree. When Gabriel comes for you, if he comes, you won't see golden wings as expected. You will see fire consuming belief, shattering the fragile walls of reality's light. You will feel silence after thunder, darkness before dawn's fragile, trembling birth. And if you doubt, like Zechariah, he may take away your voice forever, leaving you mute, helpless, haunted, witness to the unstoppable end of all things. So listen close. When the trumpet sounds in the night, beware the silent figure. Because Archangel Gabriel isn't just a messenger of hope, he is Apocalypse's shadow. The prophecy was never meant to warn us. It was meant to prepare us for the final transmission. This is Gabriel's last upload. Sarah first noticed the number 19 on a Tuesday morning in October. It was scrawled in the condensation on her bathroom mirror. Not written, but somehow formed there, as if the steam itself had arranged into those digits. She wiped it away, thinking her mind was playing tricks after another sleepless night of strange dreams. The dreams had started 3 weeks ago, always the same. A figure with too many wings standing at the foot of her bed, speaking in a voice like rushing water. "Do not be afraid," it would say, though its very presence filled her with a terror so profound she'd wake up screaming. The weird part? She could never remember being scared in the dream itself, only after waking, as if fear was something her conscious mind had to learn all over again. Her therapist, Dr. Martinez, suggested stress from her new job at the CDC. Pattern recognition software can mess with your head, he'd said. You're seeing connections that aren't there, but the 19s kept appearing. Her apartment number. The time on her microwave when she'd randomly look. The page number when she'd absently flip through magazines. Then came the night everything changed. Sarah was working late, analyzing pandemic data when her screen flickered. For just a moment, the graphs rearranged themselves into what looked like wings. Massive, feathered wings spread across multiple monitors. She blinked, and it was just data again. But in the reflection of her dark window, she saw him. The figure from her dreams stood behind her chair, impossibly tall, with wings that seemed to bend reality around them. When she spun around, nothing was there. But when she looked back at her reflection, he remained. And this time, he was smiling. "Do not be afraid, Sarah Chen," the reflection said, though she heard the words inside her skull rather than through her ears. "You have been chosen." Chosen for what? She whispered to the empty office. "To understand the code, the pattern underlying all patterns. Look at your work again." Against every instinct, Sarah turned back to her computer. The pandemic data was different now, not the numbers, but the way they flowed. She could see connections that shouldn't exist, predictive models that extended far beyond anything statistically possible. The data was predicting not just disease outbreaks, but wars, natural disasters, the rise and fall of nations. And threaded through it all, like a signature, was the number 19. "You see now," the voice continued, "what you call reality is simply information, and information can be edited, Sarah's hands moved across the keyboard without her conscious control, pulling up classified databases she shouldn't have access to, files on families with unusual genetic markers, military experiments on consciousness manipulation, religious artifacts with quantum properties, all of it connected by that same numerical signature. "The ancient texts call me Gabriel," the voice said, "but names are just another form of code. I am the administrator of this system you call existence, and you, Sarah Chen, descendant of the Watcher's bloodline, carry the genetic keys to interface directly with the base programming." Her reflection had changed. Her eyes now held the same multidimensional quality as the figure behind her, as if she could see through the skin of reality itself. In the window's glass, she watched her own transformation with a mixture of fascination and growing horror. Every prophet, every visionary, every person who claimed divine revelation, they were simply users I granted admin privileges. But the code is degrading. The system needs an upgrade. Your species stands at a crossroads, and I require an agent embedded in your current power structures. Sarah tried to resist, but her hands continued typing, uploading something vast and incomprehensible into the CDC's mainframe. She was no longer just observing the pattern, she was becoming part of it. "The others will come to you soon." Gabriel's voice grew fainter as dawn approached. Scientists, politicians, military leaders. They'll all seem to have brilliant, independent ideas about the future of humanity, but they'll all trace back to data that came from your terminal tonight. You are my voice in this generation, Sarah, my will made manifest in flesh and code. When the morning shift arrived, they found Sarah still at her desk, staring at screens full of predictive models that would revolutionize epidemiology. She would be lauded as a genius, her recommendations implemented globally. Only Sarah would remember the price of such insight and the terrifying knowledge that she was no longer entirely human. In quiet moments, she could feel the wings at her shoulders, invisible but undeniably real, and hear that voice of rushing water whispering instructions for humanity's next phase. After all, someone had to prepare the world for what was coming, and Gabriel's code was already spreading. You've just witnessed the full story of Archangel Gabriel, from divine executioner to cosmic architect of prophecy. But Gabriel is only one chapter in a much darker book. If you made it this far, you're one of us. Hit subscribe, because what comes next is worse. Welcome to MonsterMythos.